Welcome to the 2023 Statewide Ballot Issue Overview presented by the League of Women Voters. I am Rebecca Winning, co-chair of the Voter Service Group with the Jeffco League, and we're here to talk about the statewide ballot issues today. Slide 2. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure that everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and litigation at the local, state, and national levels. Elections are our chance to stand up for what matters most to us and to have an impact on the issues that affect us, our communities, our families, and our future. The League of Women Voters believes in empowering you, the voter, with straightforward information so your voice will be heard. And we thank you for joining us today to become an informed voter. This presentation covers the two statewide measures appearing on the November 7th, 2023 ballot, Proposition HH and Proposition II. And the presentation will be available on the League of Women Voters of Colorado YouTube channel through Election Day. Let's begin with Proposition HH, entitled Reduce Property Taxes and Retain State Revenue. As the title suggests, Proposition HH is a complex proposal. We will provide an overview of the measure, explore what your vote means, and dive into the impact Proposition HH will have on property taxes, tax refunds, and revenues if the measure passes. So county assessors indicate that home values across Colorado increased 40% on average over the last 2 years. To help offset these increases, Proposition HH would lower the assessment rate to 6.7% from 6.765% and hold it there through 2032. It would also subtract a set amount of money from a property's taxable value. So Proposition HH would relieve property tax bills going forward. It would fund schools and reimburse local governments using the state Tabor surplus up to the new HH revenue cap. This measure was referred to voters by the state legislature and requires a simple majority vote to pass. Let's start with an overview. It would reduce the property taxes owed for homes and businesses for at least 10 years compared to what would be owed from current levels. It provides additional tax relief for owner-occupied homes and multifamily residences. The senior exemption will be portable when seniors move. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, when you've lived in your home for 10 years, you get a break on your property taxes. This would make that break portable. So if you move to a new residence, you don't have to wait 10 years to get the senior exemption. You would get it automatically. The state can retain revenue after 2023 without further voter approval if property tax decreases equivalent to those in the measure are maintained. The retained revenue will be spent on education, sent to local governments to counter their property tax revenue reduction, and fund rental assistance programs. Proposition HH will establish limits on tax revenue growth for most local governments with a mechanism to waive the new limit. And the Taxpayer Bill of Rights refunds for individuals, Tabor refunds, will be reduced compared to current levels and equalized for the 2023 tax year as determined by tax filing status. So here's what your vote means. A vote yes on Proposition HH lowers property taxes owed, allows the state to keep additional revenue that would otherwise be refunded to taxpayers, temporarily changes how taxpayer Tabor refunds are distributed, and creates a new property tax limit for most local governments. A vote no on Proposition HH maintains the current law for property taxes, Tabor refunds, and state and local government revenue limits. So the impact on property taxes, only local governments collect property tax. There is no state property tax. Property taxes are paid on a portion of the property's value known as the taxable value or assessed value. It is calculated by multiplying the value of your home by the assessment rate. Proposition HH lowers the property tax owned by property owners compared to what will be owed without the measure, because these property taxes, as we said, have increased significantly in most areas of the state, resulting in higher property taxes owed. The measure results in a smaller increase in property taxes than under the current law. The impact on the individual property owner depends on the type and value of the property and the tax rates or mill levies for the local governments where the property is located. The next chart shows the average property tax impacts for owner-occupied and multifamily properties if Proposition HH passed. So you can see in the boxed area, if your primary residential property is valued at $350,000, your tax bill would be reduced by $179 to $239 for 2023, by $276 to $331 less for the next year. And then there will be further reductions in 2025. Please note that these property tax savings will depend on whether or not local governments waive the new revenue limits created by Proposition HH. And the impact on state revenue retention. Proposition HH creates a new cap on the amount of money the state may retain. It is higher than the current cap that was established by voters when Referendum C was passed. Proposition HH allows the state to retain an additional revenue up to the new cap, which grows by population growth and inflation plus 1 percentage point each year. The measure would allow the state to retain an estimated $170 million in its state budget for 23-24 and $360 million in state budget year 24 to 25. The state can retain revenue after 2032. This HH lasts for 10 years. And the state would be able to retain revenue after that 10-year period without further voter approval if property tax decreases equivalent to those in the measure are retained. Otherwise, the cap reverts to the current Tabor calculations, mostly growing by inflation and population growth. And Tabor refunds, if any, would be larger. So where does the money go? The retained revenue will be used to reimburse local governments and school districts for lost property tax revenues as a result of this measure. Here's the breakdown. Up to 20% to reimburse eligible local governments. That's like fire, paying for fire, all the stuff that local governments pay for fire, water, other services. Up to $20 million each year for rental assistance, and then the remaining funds to reimburse school districts. There is an impact on your Tabor refunds. The Colorado Constitution includes a section, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, commonly known as Tabor, limiting the amount of money that the state government can collect and spend or save each year. And voter approval is required to retain money above the Tabor limit. If money is collected above the limit, the excess must be refunded to taxpayers, and this is called a Tabor refund. Under current law, Tabor refunds to taxpayers are typically distributed through the state income tax based on the taxpayer's adjusted gross income. If Proposition HH passes for the 2023 tax year, refunds will be distributed in an equal amount for each taxpayer, estimated at $898 for single filers and $1,796 for joint filers. The actual amounts refunded depend on the final state revenue for the 22-23 budget year. This measures impact on Tabor refunds over the long term, depends on population growth, inflation, and state revenue collections. Absent future policy changes, state revenue collections are largely driven by economic activity. So you can take a look at the projected change with this example. In 24 and 25, Tabor refunds are expected to decrease compared to what would be distributed under current law. Refunds will be distributed based on taxpayers' income. This chart shows the projected changes. For example, if Proposition HH passes in 24 and 25, your refund is expected to decrease $42 if you're in this range where the 52,000 to 103,000 adjusted gross income range. The changes in Proposition HH, next slide, please, are in place until 2032, but the measure allows the state legislature to extend them without additional voter approval if passing equivalent tax cuts. Each year, Tabor refunds will be determined in one of three ways, depending on the level of state revenue collected. Here are the scenarios. In scenario 1, when state revenue exceeds the new Proposition HH cap, Tabor refunds will decrease. Scenario 2, when state revenue exceeds the current Ref C revenue cap, but is still less than the new Proposition HH cap, Tabor refunds will be eliminated. When state revenue falls below the current Ref C cap, the measure will have no impact on Tabor funds, as refunds would not be made under the current law. The impact on local government revenue. Cities, towns, counties, school districts, and special districts collect property taxes to fund public schools and local services such as road maintenance, police departments, fire protection, water and sewer infrastructure, parks, and libraries. Due to the new property tax revenue limit and reduced property taxes, if Proposition HH passes, revenue for local governments will decrease compared to what local governments are authorized to collect under current law. Some reductions will be partially offset through reimbursements from the state. Not all local governments that collect property taxes are treated the same by Proposition HH, so let's look at the differences. Local governments that are not currently subject to other revenue limits cannot collect property tax revenue above the amount they collected in the prior year plus inflation. If a local government exceeds this limit, it must refund any property tax revenue collected over the limit to taxpayers or lower its tax rate, i.e. mill levy, for 1 year. Another option is to waive the limit each year by notifying the public, holding a meeting for public comment, and adopting an ordinance or resolution. Next slide, please. School districts and home rule jurisdictions are not subject to this limit. In possible reaction to this, some local jurisdictions are asking voters to explore changing to home rule on the ballot. As we mentioned earlier, some revenue loss due to property tax reductions will be partially offered through reimbursements from the state. Based on the type of local government, the population of the county in which the local government is located, and the growth of property values in the jurisdiction, reimbursements can range from 65% to 100% of lost revenue. Counties, cities, towns, and special districts will be eligible for reimbursement unless their assessed value exceeds 2022 levels by 20% or more. Smaller counties and those with slower property value growth will generally receive higher reimbursement rates. School districts will be fully reimbursed through the public school funding formula using money retained by the state. So in summary, Proposition HH would relieve property tax bills. It would fund schools and reimburse local governments using the state Tabor surplus up to the new HH cap. This concludes the League's summary of Proposition HH. Need more? Here are two great resources, and they will provide an in-depth look into the fiscal impacts. For more on the fiscal impact of Proposition HH, please refer to your Colorado Legislative Council Blue Book, which was mailed to all registered voter households starting on October 6th. And then there's this really cool calculation tool where you can, if you just click on this QR code down here at the bottom, you can actually go to the calculation tool and see how the combination of the property tax changes and Tabor refund changes will impact taxpayers in your area. And you can get there by visiting this link here on the bottom, hhcalc.apps.coleg.gov/, or just scan the QR code. So that's it for HH. The second measure on the ballot for this November's election is Proposition II, entitled Retain Nicotine Tax Revenue in Excess of Blue Book Estimate. This measure was referred to the voters by the state legislature and requires a simple majority vote to pass. During this section, we'll provide an overview of the measure, what your vote means, and the impact it will have on tax rates and revenue retention. As an overview, back in 2020, under Proposition EE, voters approved a tax on cigarettes, tobacco, and other nicotine products. In the first year of this tax, the state collected more revenue than the state estimated in the Colorado Legislative Council Blue Book. The excess revenue was mostly due to tax revenue from nicotine products such as e-cigarettes and vaping. Currently, the Colorado Constitution requires the state to refund the excess revenue to wholesalers and distributors of tobacco and nicotine products, and it requires us to permanently reduce the tax rate on these products, or ask the voters to allow the state to keep all revenue collected from the new tax, which is what Proposition II proposes to do. Proposition II would use over $20 million already collected in nicotine and tobacco taxes for preschool programs, rather than refund this revenue to nicotine and tobacco wholesalers and distributors. So here's what your vote means. A yes vote on Proposition II allows the state to keep and spend over $20 million in tax revenue that has already been collected from the sale of cigarettes, tobacco products, and nicotine products, including interest, and to maintain the current tax rates on those products. And the tax revenue will be spent on preschool programs. A no vote on Proposition II means that over $20 million will be refunded to wholesalers and distributors of cigarettes, tobacco products, and nicotine products, and tax rates on those products will be reduced. So let's look at the tax rates proposed with Proposition II. If Proposition II passes, the cigarette, tobacco, and nicotine products taxes will stay at the previously voter-approved rates, and future tax rates see an increase. This chart shows the tax rates if Proposition II passes with future tax rates. So in each product category, you've got the taxes on those products from before EE was passed. You see the taxes increased based on Proposition EE and the total tax rates. And you can see they're increasing, and the revenue therefore would be increasing. If Proposition II fails, the taxes will be reduced by 11.53%. And please note that the taxes that existed prior to Proposition EE would remain in place regardless. So the revenue collected from the cigarettes, tobacco, and other nicotine products taxes in the first year was 208 million, or 21.5 million more than the estimate that voters approved in 2020. This excess revenue has earned over 2 million in interest, so the total now is over $23 million for this first year. If Proposition II passes, the state will keep and spend over 23 million, along with future revenue collected by maintaining the tax rates and adding the tax rate increases previously approved by voters under Proposition EE. Tax revenues will be used to support the Universal Free Preschool Program, which provides part-day preschool programming to all children in the year before kindergarten and 3- and 4-year-old children with disabilities. Additional preschool programming is also available under the program for low-income families and at-risk children. For the 23-24 budget year, spending will increase by the amount of the refund, plus the increase in state revenue, which totals 38.1 million. The preschool program will receive 32.5 million, and 5.6 million will be available for spending from the state general fund. For the 24-25 budget year, spending on preschool programs will increase by 32.1 million, funded by the future tax rate increases on cigarettes, tobacco products, and nicotine products previously set under Proposition EE. Proposition II would use over 20 million already collected in nicotine and tobacco taxes for preschool programs, rather than refund this revenue to nicotine and tobacco wholesalers and distributors. So for more information on this, you can find fiscal analysis and more in the Legislative Council of the Colorado General Assembly 2023 State Ballot Information Booklet at leg.colorado.gov/bluebook. So now you're fully informed on these two issues, or you have a good overview of these issues. Election day is November 7th, 2023. In Colorado, all registered voters were mailed a ballot, or will be mailed a ballot, between October 16th and October 20th. All ballots must be received at the clerk's office by 7 p.m. on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, and can be mailed or dropped off. Starting Monday, October 16th, drop boxes along with voter service and polling centers will be available for your voting convenience. Location and hours of operation will be included with your ballot. You can sign up to track the status of your mail ballot from mailed to counted by visiting ballottracks.coloradosos.gov. Once you receive your ballot, you can find candidate information and more at vote411.org, the League's award-winning online voter guide. This resource is an amazing resource and has interviews with questions from candidates where you can compare candidates side by side. It has information on state and local ballot issues. It's truly your one-stop shopping for election information. So in closing, elections are our chance to stand up for what matters most to us and to have an impact on the issues that affect us, our communities, our families, and our future. The League of Women Voters believes in empowering you, the voter, with straightforward information so your voice will be heard. Thank you for being an informed voter. Okay, and now I want to share with you, the League has two different resources. There's a guide to ballot issues. These are available on the League website, and they'll be distributed they're in the voter service kits that are coming out to all the units. So you have information on the ballot issues, and it will give you basic information about the impacts of Proposition HA and HH and II. What happens if people vote yes? What happens if people vote no? And it's a nice overview of both of the ballot issues. This year, for the first time, we also have this pamphlet, which is the League position on these ballot issues. And it goes into kind of pros and cons and explains the the league is proposing a yes vote for both Proposition HH and II. And this explains why we're taking that position. These will also be in your voter kits and can be distributed when you go out to talk to people. So having gotten into this a little bit with the state training and then looking at the resources on the website, I admit it's a complex proposition, especially HH. I think II is pretty easy to understand. HH is a little more complicated. But I would encourage all of you to, make yourselves available to go out and help people in the community understand what these issues are about, because they could have a really serious impact on our future in terms of funding it, filling the gaps in education funding that we've suffered under for years, and a lot of other things. So thank you for listening.